afternoon, Dan. Thanks for having me out to your house.
My pleasure, Don. Great to be here.
Thank you. Well, let's go right into it. I've known you quite a while. You were my sister's band director and band director at a few schools, retired. You told me you just failed retirement, and we'll talk about that.
I've clearly failed retirement.
But why don't we start, if you wouldn't mind, from the beginning, maybe some musical upbringing, schools you attended, musical highlights, why you chose to be in band, and why you chose to be a band director.
Well, I grew up in a relatively small town, Freeport, Illinois. It's about 25 miles west of...
Home of the pretzels?
Home of the pretzels. Okay. Yes, I was a pretzel, yeah. Pretty normal for us, pretty strange for everybody else. Not everybody has a snack food as their mascot. My mother was a church organist, so every morning at 6:30 a.m., like it or not, on Sunday morning, Mom would be downstairs on the piano practicing her music before she went off to play services at the Lutheran church, which is what her job was. We went to one of the other churches in town. But I became involved in taking piano lessons when I was about 7 years old from Mrs. Burgess, and that really gave me a head start on my musical journey. When I started my band instrument, trumpet, in fifth grade, that was kind of a breeze for me with all of the musical basis that I had already begun. We had an excellent junior high band program in Freeport, something that everybody was really, really proud of. The director's name was Lester Wernz. I also took private lessons from him, as did just about everybody in Freeport who wanted to be good on their band instrument. He's one of those very few teachers that was really qualified and really adept at teaching all of the instruments. And so our junior high band program had exceptionally high standards, and we were very proud to be part of that program. From there, Freeport High School band program and orchestra program. And to my knowledge, Freeport High School is the oldest continuously operating school orchestra program in the nation.
Oh, wow.
And, in contrast to the way scheduling demands are now, my junior and senior year in high school, I was able to be in band and choir and orchestra. That would be really, really difficult to do nowadays. But I participated in solo and ensemble contest and auditioned for IMEA. A particularly crystallizing experience in my life was not only being selected to IMEA District for the first time as a junior in it'd be the fall of 1974, and having the opportunity, I was placed in the district orchestra, and I was the principal trumpet in that. And that was my first taste of having to transpose a part. I've never had to do that before. But I was playing the principal trumpet in Tchaikovsky's Capriccio Italien. And we were playing in the wonderful concert hall at Northern Illinois University and playing with this large orchestra of really talented players. And it was kind of that moment I said, wow, this is just awesome. I want to do this. I want to make this my life. Being involved in music. The same year I made the All-State Band and another great experience, and that was back in the day when the All-State concerts were held in the concourse of the Arlington Park Racetrack in Arlington Heights. Out of all of the places in Illinois, that's where the All-State concerts were held, but it was a big honor to be part of that. About my junior year in high school, I told Mr. Wernz, my private teacher and former junior high director, that I wanted to be a band director. And he's one of those people that will really make you think about that decision and try to talk you out of it, and made you realize that, well, most of what you do isn't what you see the director doing. And he said, but if you insist on going that direction, I'll support you in every way possible. So starting my junior year in high school, in addition to my trumpet, my first instrument, Mr. Wernz taught me private lessons on flute and clarinet and drums. So I did that my junior and senior years in high school. So on every Monday, which was my private lesson day, I would take a bundle of instruments with me, and I had one lesson before school and my secondary instruments after school.
So were you still keeping up with piano at this point too?
I had stopped piano lessons formally, I think when I was in 8th grade. But I still do to this day, play piano as much as I can. I do some accompanying, help out at church when I can. And I've inherited the piano that I took lessons on as a kid. It's in my living room. It's a 1908 Steinway baby grand. It's a wonderful instrument and a great treasure. Looking towards college, I decided on Illinois State University over some other choices. It just felt right for me, and it turned out to be an excellent choice for me. I was actually a part of the very first edition of what they called, since that time, the Big Red Marching Machine. Before that, it was just the ISU Marching Band. And so I was part of that. I was one of the better trumpet players in the band program in the trumpet studio, and played in orchestra. Played for 2 years. One of my best ensemble experiences being in the Madrigal Brass Ensemble, which played for, I think, 15 or 16 Madrigal dinner performances between Thanksgiving and Christmas. So upon graduating from ISU, my first job was in Itasca School District 10, which is up near O'Hare. And my first year of teaching was the same year that Ken Snook, the legendary Ken Snook, started at Lake Park High School.
Okay.
So I made it a point to get to know Ken, and I got to be a part of his marching band staff with the Lake Park Marching Band, which was in the early stages of an absolute dynasty of state championships, and learned a lot about that kind of the marching band activity. So I did 3 years at Itasca, which was a grade 4 through 8 elementary junior high program. It involved 2 K through 5 elementaries, a public 6 through 8 building, a Lutheran K through 8 building, and a Catholic K through 8 building, and we all combined as part of the Itasca band program. So I did a lot of traveling during the day, and being my first job, I made a lot of mistakes and learned a lot.
I thought you were going to say a lot of money for a second.
No, I didn't. And I think as I remember, my first teaching salary back in my first year, I think, as I remember, was $12,800.
And what year was this?
This was in 1981.
Okay.
After my first 3 years at Itasca, I took a leave of absence because it was my desire to, number one, get a master's degree, but also move on and teach at the high school level. That's kind of where my sights were directed. So I earned a graduate assistantship at the University of Iowa in music education. I had a wonderful experience there, being a grad staff with the Hawkeye Marching Band and being a part of their symphony band, and just having some great experiences there with Dr. Myron Welch, who's director of bands emeritus at the University of Iowa. Morgan Jones was on the staff there, and just a whole lot of great people. looking for a high school job after that 1 year at Iowa. It turned out to be the best thing for me to go back and return to my previous job in Itasca for 1 year. And at the end of that year, I interviewed for and got the band director job at Lockport Township High School. And as it turns out, as I found out early on in the process, that, well, the job was really the band director and the choir director. So in a high school of 2,200 students, I was the band director and choir director, the only music teacher in that high school.
The music man.
The music man. And they had offered that job to both of the previous directors. There had been two directors. They were cutting it to one.
Okay.
Neither of the previous directors wanted it. So they got this young sucker who was ambitious enough to want to do anything to get their first high school job. And so that was me. Fortunately, after 2 years, they hired a part-time choir director to come on and take over that. I like to tell people that I started with 62 students at Lockport, and when I left, there were 230. The fact is, I started with 96. The second year, there was 62.
Okay.
So there were some changes along the way. There was some learning on my part. Some students that just weren't buying into some cultural changes that needed to happen within the band program. But enough students stood by my vision for the program.
And if we could talk about that for a second. Mm-hmm. In your opinion, looking back, were there some kids that didn't return the next year that you wished would have returned, or was it mostly addition by subtraction?
It was really mostly addition by subtraction. And the analogy I like to use is sometimes, if you want to have a beautiful, thriving garden, you have to get rid of the weeds.
Okay.
And sometimes they get rid of themselves. But having high standards and the primary strongest feeder program for Lockport Township High School at the time was Homer Junior High. They had been a perennial junior high super state band, and really, really strong players came out of that program. But it didn't seem like they were getting, at the time, a better experience at the high school.
Okay.
And so some of them, didn't continue or dropped out.
And this was a pretty storied program.
Right. It had been. It had fallen on some weaker times and needed a booster shot.
Sure.
And that's what I tried to provide for the program, and I made some really valuable connections. A great friend of mine that I met my first year at Lockport was George Perard, who was in the Cheney Manji junior high program. Right down the road from us was Ted Liga and Joliet Central. And so many other legendary programs that I looked up to and idolized: Joliet Central, Willowbrook, Lombard East, Marian Catholic, and I made connections with those directors, find out how they do what they do, how they got their programs to where they are, and that's just a big cornerstone of what I was able to do, is relying on some really strong mentors. And so, once we started experiencing some success at Lockport through festivals and traveling, one of the biggest things that was a huge shot in the arm for the program was the first time we made Superstate, which was 1990. Along the journey to that Superstate appearance, we had the opportunity to have William Ravelli come out to our school and work with our band. We arranged this through Vandercook. On the day that we had arranged for Dr. Ravelli to come out, the plan was for me to pick him up at Midway Airport and drive him to Lockport, and he was going to we had arranged an all-day field trip.
Okay.
And so he called me early in the morning, that his flight was delayed because of fog in Detroit. And I said, well, let's see. The fog will probably lift at some point. Just be on whatever the next plane is and let me know when you get in. I'm going to go to the airport and wait to get in. So he finally got in, and we ended up starting a little bit later. And but we still got, I think, 4.5 hours of time working on their music with him. And it was just a great experience. We had publicized it in newspapers, and some of Ravelli's former students who lived in the Lockport Joliet area came over to say hello. And so then I drove him back to the airport, and we had great conversation both ways, about his start in the music profession. A few days later, I get a handwritten envelope from him expressing his thanks for the opportunity to work with the band and wishing the band good luck. And it included a $5 bill, which he included to help pay for the collect call. So I thought that was just the greatest thing. So because of the string of 14 Superstate appearances that we had during the time that I was Lockport, the success just built upon itself. In 1992, I was awarded an Outstanding Chicagoland Music Educator Award, the Quinlan and Fabish Award. I decided to take the band to the second Bands of America National Concert Band Festival in 1993. At the time, it was held at Pick Stager Hall on the Northwestern University campus, and there was a who's who of great conductors, educators, band people as evaluators. Looking up, I would see in the balcony Dr. Ravelli evaluating conductors. Frederick Fennell was an evaluator. Let's see, Ray Kramer was there. Richard Crane, just any number of great people. A great opportunity for the students to perform on a national stage like that. We did that twice again in 1996 and in 2000, and these are all life-changing experiences playing at the National Concert Band Festival. So I can't say enough good things about my 15 years at Lockport. I have some wonderful relationships with the students from that time, and many of them I still keep in touch with. Many of them are in the band profession still. That's where a whole lot of things in terms of that program, resurrecting and building that program. And, certainly it has gone even beyond that nowadays. So I'm delighted to see all of that continuing. After Lockport, I was at Lincoln Way East from its opening in 2001 to 2003. I was at Elk Grove High School 03 to 05. And in 2005, my good friend Bob Page called me and told me that his wife Valerie was going to move from her job at Plainfield Central High School back to the middle school, elementary level, and that the high school job would be opening, and that might be something that I might look at. At the time, I was driving a really great distance to Elk Grove from the southwest suburbs, and so that was a really enticing possibility. And so
commutes are not as fun as people think. And
commutes are not
This
fun,
is before podcasts, too. So
right. And it was also before the southern extension of 355 had been completed.
Yeah.
My first year at Elk Grove, I was driving a round trip of about 100 miles a day.
Oh, gosh.
So,
and that sounds, it's interesting because I'm sure the morning was okay, tolerable. I'm sure a normal day would be fine. But if you're a band director, and I'm assuming you're having 2 rehearsals at least a week, I mean, you're probably looking at some pretty late nights there.
Well, we had as part of the schedule, jazz band happened at 7 a.m. which means I'm leaving at 5:30 to 5:45 to get up there. And there were some, I can think of 3 or 4 or 5 late nights where there was such a late night and an early turnaround that I actually got a hotel room and stayed overnight in that area. And that was not something that was going to be sustainable long term with raising a family. So I looked into the Plainfield Central job, and everything about it felt right. You know, the Lockport, Plainfield, Joliet area those are band towns. Historically, they're band towns going back many decades and a century. And so it just felt like a good opportunity for me, and it turned out to be just that. And my last 13 years were great ones that I enjoyed greatly at Plainfield Central High School, and developing that program. It had become a little weak, and we brought that back to a good level of success and prominence and quality.
And then you're retired now, and every day you wake up, have coffee, watch TV, and go to bed, right?
Well, yes, I retired in June of 2018, and as I like to tell people, I flunked retirement. You start going to school, preschool, kindergarten, and throughout your public school years and your college years, and then your teaching career, you're on a school schedule. Mm-hmm. You know, starting in August or September and going into May or June, you're on a school schedule. And all of a sudden, when you retire, you're not. And that's a big change. And with it, unless you're really active, that sense of getting up every day with a defined purpose isn't there. So I'm just kind of restructuring or rewiring myself, and I took an opportunity last year to do a maternity leave position at Plank Junior High in Oswego, which I did for about 2 months. And I have also been hired by North Central College in Naperville to be a clinical supervisor for practicum and student teachers in instrumental music. And, just a week ago, I started on a paternity leave position at Oswego High School, which I will be doing till the end of January 2020. So, yes, clearly I have failed, but I get to say yes to what I want to do.
Is that the difference? Because I might be speaking out of turn with this, but I notice a lot of music teachers will retire and then they'll start working again. And I don't know. I don't talk with a lot of math, English, science teachers if that's what they do also. But I see, my high school band director retires, and then within a year, he's working at an elementary school program and then a middle school, and goes on another 10 years. Is it because you get to say yes to things? Is there part of it where now that you're retired, I mean, is it a little less stressful to just kind of focus on the I don't know, the fun parts of it, not have to deal with the other things?
Yeah, I think it's both. You get to say yes to what you want to. Also, it's just in our DNA that we want to make music, and teaching music. That is a big part of it. And part of it is, if you're subbing, it's like being a grandparent. You're taking care of the kids for a defined period of time, and you're giving them back to the parents.
And there's a definite end to it too.
Yeah,
as opposed to teaching in Illinois, where we might retire someday. I mean, you're fine,
right? But I think with music teachers, it's way more prevalent for us to stay involved, stay making music.
Sure.
Because with music teachers, it is like the ministry. It's a calling for us, not a job. And I think in some other areas, and I can't speak for them all, I think less teachers in other areas do a big amount of subbing. Or if they do, they might do it because they need the money.
Sure.
But I hear more of them say, "I'm done," than music teachers.
Sure. So how long is the official career then? 36 plus years?
36 years was the total. Yeah.
Okay. So if we go from year one or maybe even pre-year one to year 36, obviously some things changed, some things stayed the same. What are maybe some things that you noticed in that career span? Maybe some things that were the same. What are we doing today that we still did back in the late 70s, early 80s?
I think our human to human, person to person connection with the students, that is still very much the same, and I think that the connections we make with them, caring about them as people, that is a constant. What's changed a lot certainly has been the technology. Technology has made our lives, speaking as music teachers, better. Our ability to communicate on a moment's notice with our students and our parents and our administrators is a lot better. We use communication, to keep track of kids for student safety purposes, for scheduling. So there's lots of benefits to that. We can listen to great recordings of the music that we're studying and have our students listen to recordings of the music they're studying, record themselves, send in recordings of them. There's all kinds of in-class usages for technology that didn't exist. When I started, we were recording concerts on reel-to-reel and then on cassette, and we got music on LPs or cassettes and things like that. Now we've got endless and instantaneous access to technology. The negative is that with the prevalence of technology, especially social media and the phone devices that kids have with them every minute of every day, they're a lot more distracted than they used to be. And so we have to at times struggle for their focus in the classroom, and the focus is at times difficult, and a lot of that is due to technology.
Sure. Do you think it maybe hasn't affected music classes as much as some other classes? And I just say, like, we replace textbook now. Textbooks at our school are usually digital. Right. And the students have a device. Even if we're reading music off of iPads, they are still having to blow on a horn or hit a drum. So for me, at least, I look at it, I'm like, I get what you're saying. It's definitely affected it, and especially if there's a long 10 bars of rest. You see a kid really inspecting their French horn bell, putting the phone in there. But I don't know. Do you think it's as bad for us as it might be for some other classes?
No. I don't think so. And you're right. How we play a wind instrument or a percussion instrument has not changed, and that won't change because that's it. Our voice, our body, is still the instrument, and the instrument is the amplifier for ourselves.
Sure.
We are the human being playing that, and that can't be reproduced any other way. But we've got other technological advances that can help us teach those instruments better, more efficiently than we used to be able to.
So then let's tie that efficiency thing into maybe your first years. And I think today you and I would be a bit of an anomaly because we both had private lessons, at least around this area. Mm-hmm. I'm finding at my school now we have little to none private lessons. How was that looking at Plainfield your last few years? Were there more kids taking private lessons at the beginning as opposed to the end? Did it kind of stay the same?
It had always been rather on the low side, and a lot of that is cited by students and parents as an economic thing.
Sure.
And so as teachers, we have to take that into account and overcome that. It's a reality in many places. I don't think I ever taught in a place, except for maybe towards the end of my tenure at Lockport, where I had a really high percentage of students taking private lessons, and no secret that would be more the kids who were in the higher level groups as they find out that that's what they need to do to be in a higher level group.
Okay.
But, you can access online private instruction via Skype or video lessons from somebody. So, it's up to the imagination to search out all kinds of resources, but they're there.
So as music teachers, we know there's some ups and downs at times. And, you were saying earlier when you talked to your teacher when you were younger, saying you wanted to be a band director, he told you, here's the reality of it there. Was there any, especially since we have some newer teachers that listen to the show, was there any challenging point in your career that you can think of, and how did you get through that?
My first year was probably the most challenging year that I can think of. It was kind of a struggle, just kind of new to the profession, figuring things out, and taking a program that had a veteran teacher, and a lot of it was related to classroom management and dealing with students in the classroom. There were some things that I may not have been as well prepared for. I can still remember the names of some of those students that gave me a lot of trouble that first year. And, I think you have to go through that, and you have to ask for help from other more experienced people. And that's always the best thing you can do when you're a younger teacher.
Did you walk into that school with a mentor in place?
Outside of my college instructors, I didn't really.
Okay.
You kind of find out by keeping your ear to the ground who's got the strong programs in the area that you want to talk to. And I was, pretty near Wooddale Junior High. Frank Campisi, Bob Wiss was right next door to me in Roselle.
And I remember you saying, you were seeking those people out. I just didn't know if at the school, because it seems like today you go into a school, they're setting you up the mentor, there's professional development for everything.
We didn't really have a mentor within the school, at least in the instrumental area. I did have an exceptional partner in the music department, Ann Lesher, who was on the general music vocal side of it, and she was as much of a mentor as she could be, and she was very helpful to me getting through those first few years.
So then, where you're in your current position now at North Central College, and you're helping out new teachers, you're coming or future teachers, I should say, and you're observing them. So they're going to walk into their first year teaching, and based on what you've gone through and everything else, what's the best advice that you can give them without them paying for the class at North Central?
I think new teachers need to have a mentor that does their job, a band director, mentor nearby that they can bounce ideas off of, ask for help. They need to not feel like they're alone. We're in a unique position as band directors, as we are very often, especially when you're starting out, the only band director in the building, where there's a team of math teachers, a team of science teachers, English teachers, PE teachers. You're the only band director. And so, it's very easy to feel like you're alone and you're on your own little island and nobody else understands what you do. And that's because nobody else understands what you do. So it's important to have a mentor outside of your building or in your building.
Yeah. And it's also kind of strange starting off, I know, someplace where you're the only one in your building. And I know at least we play this game at Joliet sometime, which is nobody understands what we do. And then nobody understands what we do. And there had been a past colleague that said, you can't have it both ways. You're either in the culture of the school or you're not. Do you think maybe sometimes those new teachers could, take advantage of maybe somebody that's not a musician, but, let's talk about this. What are some things in the classroom teaching techniques that you think might transfer over from, I don't know, another typical classroom? Because it's not just rehearse all the time.
Some of the best learning you can do, and I'm kind of getting away from that, finding a mentor in your field.
Sure.
Every other teacher in that building is someone you can learn from.
Yeah.
No matter what their subject is. I've been fortunate in Plainfield. For a couple of years, we had a program where teachers were encouraged, urged to go and visit another classroom of somebody else who teaches another subject and just visit their classroom. There is so much to be learned from that. There's classroom management. There's how a teacher might solve this problem, how they might teach this concept, and you'll find ways where that is applicable to something you're teaching in your music classroom. So as long as you're open-minded enough, there's learning to be derived from any teacher. You just have to be really open-minded about that.
Absolutely. So I know you've had to maybe advocate for yourself in some programs in the past with the administrations and communities. Do you have maybe either any examples of that or any suggestions for music teachers to advocate and talk about the importance of their program and why it still matters in the school?
I think advocating, you have to blow your own horn. You have to be out there spreading the good news about what you're doing every chance you get. Getting photos out there, getting to the media about the good things you're doing. Getting that information out there to parents and your administrators. Administrators don't always understand what it is we do, and they may not be willing to find out. So it needs to be incumbent upon us to educate our administrators about what we do. All of the new education needs and all the new education concepts and newfangled ideas, which is not really newfangled, are things that have been done before, but a lot of the good things education is looking for, we have been doing as music educators. We give immediate feedback. We differentiate instruction like nobody else does. We've got different instruments. We certainly have different kids within large ensembles, and we're differentiating instruction constantly throughout every class, every minute, every day. We're giving immediate feedback, upon performance. You don't have to wait to take the test to find out how you did on the quiz or the test. On this repetition, we need to do this better. This was wrong. Immediate feedback. Let's do it again with these corrections. So, we know them as music educators in terms of our music language. We just have to put it into language that administration understands.
Okay.
We've got to meet them on their turf in terms of the language.
Sure, and maybe a proactive PR approach.
And there's so much opportunity to do that with social media. Everybody's got a website nowadays. Getting the good word out there about what we're doing.
Absolutely.
And there's lots of opportunities for the music department, the band program, to be the best ambassadors for the school. When there's a performance or when somebody needs to represent the school, it's often the band or choir that is called upon, and more often the band. We need to relish that opportunity to a point without becoming, merely entertainment for everybody who wants it.
Yeah.
But it is important advocacy, within boundaries.
Absolutely. So 36 years, again, public school teaching there. You've probably performed, hundreds of pieces with bands. We all know the whole suites. We know Granger. We know Alfred Reed. Are there any maybe lesser known or lesser performed works, even maybe from those composers, that you would like to hear more bands perform, or that you might want to suggest to some people out there?
Well, I'm a bit old school in that regard, but the music of Frank Erickson, Air for Band, Toccata for Band, and other pieces of his are wonderful, well-composed pieces of music. Whereas a lot of new music now is kind of formulaic music. Claire Grundman, another name from that era, the American Folk Rhapsodies. There's a piece that I've run across a few times, an Edward Elgar piece. Everybody knows Enigma Variations, but he wrote a wonderful piece called As Torrents in Summer.
Okay.
Which is a beautiful lyrical piece that can be performed by a good junior high band or high school band. Malcolm Arnold, Prelude Siciliano and Rondo. That was a piece that was performed, but I haven't seen it done very much recently. David Holsinger has written a large number of works, but I still think his best works are his hymn song settings. And, I like to see more of them being performed.
These are probably in a lot of people's libraries, too.
Absolutely. John Barnes Chance, who was taken too early, is a great composer. We know variations on a Korean folk song, but there's a piece of his called Elegy, which is just a gorgeous piece of music, a great teaching piece, and it doesn't get performed very much. Back when I was starting out, Claude Smith. Some fresh sounds in that era in the mid 70s and so forth. Incidental Suite, Emperata is pretty well known. John Mackey is a composer who is currently doing some groundbreaking work right now. But one of my favorites of his is a beautiful lyrical piece about a grade 3 level called "Sheltering Sky." I keep coming back to that as often as I can, and it was commissioned by a couple of middle schools in Oswego. As you mentioned before, the Holst suites, those are landmark works in the wind band repertoire. And let's also not forget transcriptions. They used to be all bands played.
Yeah.
Transcriptions and marches, before the wealth of original band works, and there's a lot of that. But the great transcriptions are still worth playing. Kenneth Singleton out in Colorado has done a number of transcriptions of what we like to call Warhorse overtures.
Sure.
One that I've done recently, which I love and my students fell in love with, is Morning, Noon, and Night in Vienna by Franz von Zuppe. And pieces like that, some of the older transcriptions.
I liked some of the transcriptions, just to put in my own thing here. Sorry. But it was interesting because at Joliet, we routinely have fairly strong woodwinds and the brass are not as strong. And for us, transcriptions just ended up working, especially when we would find some piece where the brass parts were written in fourths and fifths. And and here's still a challenge for the woodwinds and things like that. So it's kind of nice to hear that. At least that's the approach that I would take on it. What were maybe some approaches that you took when selecting literature?
Selecting literature, that I feel is the most important part of my job, because I believe the literature is the curriculum. And I struggled and agonized over literature every year, because I wanted to make sure that I picked the right literature that fit the group and also fit a program. We often are looking for music to play for a 30-minute concert program or a 20-minute festival program, and you need to fit within that, but also have variety. You look for pieces that the students will be able to not only play technically, but also play musically with musical beauty and phrasing, and not just merely scratching the surface of notes and rhythms. And so that's something I took very, very seriously and spent a lot of time deciding and looking for pieces. I would always look for programs that people were doing that I respect in the profession, at the high school level, at the college level. What pieces are people I respect doing? Mm-hmm. And I made lists and lists, and I've got so many literature lists, and I go over and over and over those lists, the same lists every year, add to them, and just go over them.
Yeah.
And so I became kind of a connoisseur of band literature. I've assembled a list of pieces that I did at Lockport and at Plainfield, year by year. These are the pieces that I did this year, and so I can see the pieces that I came back to and did more than once, and obviously those hold greater value for me.
Great. Well, as we close up here, I wanted to talk about just the feelings involved with this. I read that your last year, your final concert was supposed to be May 10th, but then around May 26th, I think it was, there was another concert that was a little bit of a surprise for you, and it seemed kind of like a little Mr. Holland's Opus event there. Although I never like to say that, because at the end of Mr. Holland's Opus, the program was still cut. So it's not really a feel-good movie there. But tell me how that was to have this great career. You do your final concert, maybe inside you're saying your goodbyes to the career, the school, the kids, and then all of a sudden here's just maybe a little bit of a coda that comes up.
It was kind of strange at that last, shall we say, scheduled concert. We did our normal thing, and I had a couple of my former students from 20 or so years ago came over to the concert, and it was great to see them. And we always ended our spring concert from Lockport, Plainfield. Every spring concert from '86 to 2001, the last thing played on spring concert was Irish Tune from County Derry by Percy Granger. And it just became a very heartfelt and meaningful piece for the students as a tribute to the seniors. We would play it, and I would have the seniors stand quietly one by one at the end of the piece, and then I would get off the podium and go through the aisles and do hugs and handshakes. And and so at that concert, I didn't know whether anybody had planned anything, and so it ended. And okay. So that was that, and I go, okay, fine. So a couple of weeks later, I think it was Memorial Day Saturday, my wife told me that we're going to our nephew Ethan's 8th grade graduation party in New Lenox. And so, okay, we need to leave at this time. We go, okay, we're going. And so she got in the driver's seat. I got in the passenger seat, which was not usually how it went, but sometimes did. And so we're going a different way than we would normally go to get to New Lenox. And she said, "Oh, traffic is bad on I-55, so we're going to go through Plainfield and then get on 80." So we're getting into Plainfield.
And did you know at that point? No. Okay.
No. Didn't know anything at that point. And then we're going down 59, and we're not going the way I think we should be going. And she says, "Oh, we got to stop at Jimmy John's and pick up my son Hunter, who had been working there." And we turned down Fort Beggs towards the school. And I'm thinking, well, there's something up here. What's going on? And then we go into the parking lots of school. It's 5:00 on a Saturday afternoon on Memorial Day weekend, and there's 2 parking lots full of cars. And I go, what's going on? So we parked the car illegally and get out of the car, and we walk to the outer door to the gym, and I'm kind of wondering, okay, something's going on now. And she opens the door to the gym, and I walk into the gym, and there's a couple hundred people in the bleachers, and there's a band of about 110 of my former students sitting there on the floor. And of course, I'm in tears at that point. And students going back, I think, to the late 1980s. I think I had a student from maybe 89, 90, around that time. So students from Lockport, and 1 or 2 from Lincoln Way, and a bunch from Plainfield that came back to be part of this alumni band. And I came to find out that my wife had this under wraps for the better part of a year.
Yeah.
This private Facebook
everyone knew about it
group
except you.
Called Mr. Valkema's Retiring or something like that. I knew nothing about it at all, and how and there were apparently about 1,000 people on this thing, and how nobody spilled this, I'll never know. These people need to work for the government. But she managed to pull this off, and it was just an amazing thing. Chris Vanderwall, who has followed me at Plainfield Central, had a lot to do with putting the concert together. And one of my former students, Kurt Gross from Lockport, was one of the conductors on the performance as well. And he came in, and they were doing the fight songs from Lockport and Plainfield. And my wife had put together a beautiful slide presentation with music with that. And then I got to conduct Irish Tune one more time with the alums. Very, very special. And, I was absolutely overwhelmed with all that. And I guess I can say I'm still overwhelmed that all of that happened. And just so very, very blessed to have some wonderful students that I was able to make good music with day after day. And we grew to care about each other. And I firmly believe that students don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So I put a lot of effort into getting to know the kids as people and musicians, and keep high standards along the way.
Well, it sounded like a wonderful experience and a wonderful career, and I'm glad that you're still helping out students today, as I said, with the North Central College and the Oswego, Plank Junior High, and whatever else comes up there.
Oswego High School currently.
Keeping yourself busy and out of trouble there. So
right.
All right, Dan. Well, thank you very much for sitting down today.
Thanks, Don. It's been my pleasure. Enjoyed it.